The mafia is a family affair. Well, today we're going to go over Ronald and Reginald Kray, the Kray twins.
We here at Angry Me Production want to thank our sponsor, Mobile Notary Mindy. She's certified with the National Notary Association. She's also bonded and E&O insured. She offers a wide range of services including wills, powers of attorney, medical documents, healthcare proxies, living wills, certification of trust, assignment of personal property, HIPAA waivers, advanced healthcare directives, and 99 verification. You can find her on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Mobile Notary Mindy. You can also visit her webpage at texasmobilenotarymindy.com. That's TX, mobilenotarymindy.com. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen of all ages, boys and girls, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Angry Me Production. We appreciate you coming in and letting us be a part of your lives week in and week out. We hope to do our best to present you with something that your eardrums delight in. Whether you're looking at us on YouTube or Rumble, or listening to us on Spotify, Google, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast services that we are currently on or trying to get on, we thank you. And if you don't mind, at the end of every episode, stop by, leave us a comment, leave us a like. If it asks for 5 stars, we'll take 5 stars, even if you don't like us. 5 stars are what it's all about. With that being said, we hope you enjoy our attempt to make our advocation our vocation. Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Welcome, Angry Faithful. Yes, today we're going to go over the Kray twins. There's a movie with Tom Hardy in it with Legion, which he portrays both Reginald and Ronald Kray, and we're going to go over their exploits and way of life. Now, let us begin. Ronald and Reginald Kray were born on October 24th, 1933, in Haggerston, East London, to Charles David Kray and Violet Annie Lee. The Krays were thought Eastern. What is this, Stephanie?
Thorough.
The Krays were thorough Easterners. Okay. Charles from Storeditch and Violet from Bethnal Green, and apparently mixed Irish, Australian Jewish, and Roman descent. Though this has been disputed, the both were identical twins, with Reggie born 10 minutes before Ronnie. The parents already had a 6-year-old, Charles James, a sister, Violet, born 1929. Died in infancy, and the twins contracted diphtheria when they were 3 years old. Kray's household was dominated by their mother, who remained the brothers' most important influence during their childhood. The father was a rag-to-bone man, which is a junk man, junk dealer, collected unwanted household and sold them. That's interesting. I didn't know that was actually. What's really sad is I know there's a lot of people that do the same thing around here. They go dump. We call them dumpster divers, but with a fairness for his father, their father had a fondness of heavy drinking. His work led him to live a semi-nomadic lifestyle as he traveled all over the southern England looking for junk to sell. And even when he was in London, he frequented pubs, but more often than his home. Basically, he was a drunker. The Craig twins first attended Wood Close School and Brickline, and then Daniel Street School and Bethnal Green. In 1938, the family moved to Sheen Street in Haggerston to 178 Vallis Road and Bethnal Green. Mrs. Craig was regarded as a minor celebrity in Bethnal Green for giving birth to and raising a healthy pair of twins at the time when child mortality rate was high among the British working class. In the interwar period, it was normal that one of the twins born into the working class families would die before childhood, and it was unusual that both Kray twins survive, making their mother the object of admiration in Bethnal Green, causing her to have a inflated ego. There was a feeling within Bethnal Green that there was almost unnatural emotional closeness between the twins and their mother, who shunned the company of others. Ronnie later stated that his childhood we had our mother and we had each other, so we didn't need anyone else. One of the Crazy twins who attended school with them, Billy Wilshire, recalled, "It's hard to say exactly what it was, but they weren't like other children." The Crazy biographer John Pearson argued that their mother planted seeds of malignant narcissism, which is a social syndrome comprised of mix of narcissism and antisocial behavior, sadism, and paranoid outlook on life that the twins would display as adults by encouraging her sons to think for themselves and be extraordinary while spoiling their every whim. During the Second World War, Mr. Kray deserted from the British Army, having conscripted in September 1939. He spent the next 15 years living as a fugitive, being finally arrested in 1954. During this period, he was only he only irregularly involved in raising his family. Meanwhile, the twins were evacuated to East House in Hedgington, Suffolk, with their mother and older brother. The family remained in Hedgley for about a year before moving back to London, as Mrs. Kray missed her family and friends. While they were in Stephanie Hawking, help me out with this one. I think it's Hedgley.
Hadla.
Hadla. The twins attended the Bridge Street Boys School. In a 1989 interview, Ronnie described Hadla as the twins' first time in the countryside, recalling that both were attracted to the quietness and the peacefulness of it, the fresh air and the nice scenery, nice countryside, different from London. We used to go to a big hill called Constitution Hill and used to go sledding there during the wintertime. The influence of their maternal grandfather, Jen Cannonball Lee, caused the brothers to take up amateur boxing. Then, in a popular pastime for working class boys in the East End, sibling rivalry spurred them on, and each achieved some success. Ronnie was considered one of the more aggressive of the twins, considered getting into street fights as a teenager. The British scholar Jonathan Rabin wrote that he had a low IQ, but he had an avid reader who especially looked. Sorry about that. But he loved reading books, especially books about T.E. Lawrence, Ward Wingate, and Al Capone. Rabin attribute much of Ronnie's savage potential as a teenager to his rage over having to hide his bisexual tendencies. Military service, Kray twins were called up national service in the British Army in 1952. Although the pair reported to depot of Royal Fisher at the Royal Flushers. Stephanie Hawking, help me out with this.
Fusiliers.
Fusiliers at the Tower of London. What a fusilier was a line infantry regiment in the British Army consisting existence for 283 years. It is known as the 7th Regiment of the Foot until Childers reform in 1881. But they did this at the Tower of London. They attempted to leave for only a few minutes. When a corporal in charge tried to stop them, he was seriously injured by Ronnie, who punched him in the jaw. The Krays walked back to their East End home. They were arrested the next morning by police and turned over to the army in September. While uh, absent without leave, which is called AWOL, again, the twins assaulted the police constable who tried to arrest them. They began among the last prisoners to be held in the Tower of London before being transferred to Mullen military prison in Somerset for a month to await court martial. After they were convicted, both were sent to Buff's Home Country Brigade deployed. God, that it's a simple word, but it was tongue twisted me. Jail in Canterbury, Kent. However, when it became clear that they would both be dishonorably discharged from the army, the Kray behavior worsened. They demonstrated they exercise areas outside the one mountain cell, they threw tantrums. I can't believe having grown men throw tantrums is still funny to me. Working as a correctional officer, and you see a person that's a grown man like throw a tantrum, is you try to not laugh, but you end up laughing. Uh, they emptied a latrine bucket over a sergeant. What is a latrine bucket? Latrine. Let's see here. What is a latrine bucket? Because that's kind of funny thing. Latrine bucket. It's basically a toilet, but a toilet bucket over a sergeant dumping a canteen of hot tea at another guard, handcuffing. Yeah, this happens a lot. Handcuffed yet another guard to their prison bars with a pair of stolen cuffs and set their bedding on fire. Yeah, it happens a lot. All these things that I just described, the hot tea, you think, oh, how do they get hot tea? Well, inmates are allowed to have something called a hot pot. And it's basically a hot tea pot with that heats up, and they're allowed to have it. Is it unsafe at times, depending on the person and everything? I've seen where they boil bleach and throw it on a person. Prison's a dangerous place. Let's just say that. Eventually, they were moved to communal cells where they assaulted their guard with a vase and escaped. After being quickly recaptured, they spent the last night in military custody in Canterbury, drinking cider, eating crisp, and smoking cigarillos countryside of the Young National Servicemen act as their guards. The next day, the Krays were transferred to a civilian prison to serve the sentence for criminal crimes they committed while AWOL. Ray-Ban wrote that prison psychologist who examined Ronnie found him to be educational subnormal, psychopathic, schizophrenic, and insane, which is kind of weird. It just brings back saying something like this is everybody's asking. It's at one part in Batman Begins. It's like, why, if he's insane and everything, it's like, well, the insane have a thing to go to criminal activities. Anyways, despite their less than stellar military career, Upon release, the Krays adopted an extreme militaristic style, as Ronnie took to call himself the Colonel, while their homes at 178 Vallis Road was dubbed Fort Vallis. That always gets me with a lot of these criminals that end up being like in a mafia or something like that. They end up thinking themselves as, oh, I couldn't handle it in the military, so I'm a military type person. A lot of people do that when they get out. They get that kind of military bearing, as so to speak, and they just keep it, and that's part of their lives now. But I was part of the military. I don't think myself any like a sergeant or something like that. I just, hey, this is how we do stuff, and it's just really weird. But anyways, I digress. The Kray twins' criminal record and dishonorable discharge ended their boxing careers, and the brothers turned to crime full time. They bought a rundown snooker club. What is a snooker club? Oh, snooker. It's like pool, but I think the holes are a little bit smaller. And the mild end where they started several protection rackets. By the end of the 1950s, the Krays were working for J. Murray from Liverpool and were involved in truck hijacking, armed robbery, and arson, though which they acquired their clubs and property. Oh, that's how they got their clubs and property. Okay. In 1960, Rodney was in prison for 18 months for running a protection racket. While he was in prison, Peter Ratchman, head of the landlord operation, sold Reggie a nightclub called I am going to Esmeralda Barn. Okay. Esmeralda's Barn. To ward off threats of further extortion, the location where Barclay Hotel now stands. Dude, that is a big hotel. You got to check out the Berkeley Hotel. It is huge. I guess, let's see, the wow, that could you imagine selling that? Then that could have made you a lot of money. Anyways, yet again, I digress. Ownership of the Esmeralda barn increased the Kray's influence in the West End by making them celebrities as well as criminals. The twins adopted a normal, according to which someone would fail to show due respect would be severely punished. Both brothers notorious laundering money through dog and horse tracks, as well through businesses, which led to several others being investigated during the 1960s for their cooperation with their crimes. The twins were assisted by a banker named Alan Cooper, who wanted protection against the Krays' South London rivalry, the Richardson gang. Rebin called Ronnie the dimmer of the two twins, writing that he was a man whose grasp on reality was so slight and psychologically deranged that he was able to live out a cruel, primal colored fiction, twisting the city into the shape of his bad thriller. Oh, okay. Into a bad thriller. Browning quietly consistent model of the style of the firm after what he read in the Chicago underworld in Capone's time. For example, having his own personal barber visit his flat to work on his hair because he read somewhere that that was normal practice with Chicago gangsters in 1920s. That's interesting. Okay. In 1960, the Kray twins were widely seen as prosperous and charming celebrity nightclub owners and were part of the swinging London scene. A large part of their fame was due to their non-criminal activities as popular figures on the celebrity circuit, being photographed with Dave Banley, who was an English photographer. Oh, he was photographed by Dave Banley, who is an English photographer and director, most known for his fashion photography and portraits in a role in shaping the image of the swinging 60s, and more constantly socializing with lords, MPs. What's MPs? Members of Parliament and socialites and showing business character, including they hanged out with Frank Sinatra, Peter Sellers, uh, Joan Collins, Judy Garland, Dana Doris. Ew, wow, that I don't see her as a. I looked at the photo and it was not good. Sammy Davis Jr., Shirley Bays, Liz Millen, Cliff Richards, Dusty Springfield, Jane Mansfield, Richard Harris. Oh, I know him. Danny LaRue, who was an Irish English singer and entertainer, best known as on-stage drag personnel. Okay. And Barbara Windsor. I don't know her. But in Ronnie Kray's My Story, they were the best years of our lives. They called them the swinging 60s. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones were rulers of pop music, and Canterbury Street ruled the fashion world, and me and my brother ruled London. We were fucking untouchable. Part of the Kray's newfound celebrity status was due to the widespread perception that the twins were men who had risen out of poverty into a position of great wealth and power due to their own efforts. I could see it. I mean, even though it's through crime, they were seen as an example, and a impoverished one of the mediocrity that was to replace the traditional class system. Furthermore, the 1960s was a time when many social norms were being questioned. The Krays were wrongly seen as rebels against what is perceived as normal and historical, traditional British values. Scholars Chris Jerkins and Justin Lorenzine wrote that there were probably mistrust of the establishment in the 1960s, and that many young people laughed Prime Minister McCain. Stephanie Hawking, help me out with this one.
Macmillan.
Okay. Prime Minister Macmillan and President Johnson. That's Lyndon B. Johnson. Their teachers and university lecturers and priests, and more or less off the stage. The Krays were seen as folk heroes. This was the period of intense debate that arose about social morality, sexuality, style, and social tolerance. And the Krays were involved in all of them as symbols, either bad or good, about the changes taking place in British society. The Kray what's happening now in Britain is just we're not going to get into politics in this path. We're just going to keep on going on this. Anyways, the Kray twins greatly valued their images and cultivated the medium by inviting journalists to take photos of them with other celebrities at their nightclub and donating it to charity. They went about in the obsessive way to managing and promoting the image that they were wanted, namely as benefactors who graciously generosity to charity, as the men had risen up from poverty and to become rich and powerful. That's not a bad plan. A lot of mafia types. There's stories of Joey Buttafuoco. I think it's Joey Buttafuoco. No, that's a different guy. But there's tales of like Al Capone giving out food for Thanksgiving, and also God, what is his name? He was very popular in 1980s and 70s. John Gotti. Yeah, John Gotti used to give out like hams for Thanksgiving or Christmas. But in retrospect, it's a good idea to do that in the places that you are doing crime, because it's the same thing as Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde used to give out money, and no one told the cops where they were located or anything. They kept everything to the chest. So it's basically a good idea to, if you're a criminal, be nice to certain people because you never know when you have to have a hideaway. Anyway, they went about the obsessive way of managing and promoting their images. Okay, I already said that. The sociologist Dick Hembridge. I don't think that's how you pronounce it. Hold on. Headbridge. I think it is.
Hebdige.
Headdige. God, that's a weird name. Wrote that the Krays had a awareness and importance of public corporations matched only by their image consciousness field of American politics. As we have seen, certain of the Krays projects, when closely examined, took a bizarre aspects more appropriate to the theater than to the rational purpose of profit by crime. In 1960, gambling in the clubs was legitimized in the UK, which was the first allowed to dissent people to gambling openly outside of betting on horse racing. The Krays were owners of 4 nightclubs where gambling was permitted, which not only allowed them to be seen successful businesses, but as socialites with decent people who would have previously shunned the company of gangsters running a gambling den. Gray's made a point to promoting gangster chic image, image as both dressed and stylish. Countless films had associated with gangsters, namely wearing discreet, dark, and double-breasted suits with tighted knot ties. Basically, the image of you know what, that makes sense now. Most people that wear business suits and everything, they always have this like perception of the person's bad. There was this TikTok video where they were asked, like, who would you date? This guy who's wearing a business suit, a bald head, or this guy? And they always chose the other guy, and the other guy was a serial killer, the dating game killer, and women went to the dating game killer. So, yeah. But combined with their jewelry, which large gold rings, gold bracelet, watches, diamond cuff links, the Krays coveted the redoubled image. The British scholar Ruth Penfold Monson described the twins as classic example of social bandits, criminals who became folk heroes because of the belief that they were standing up to the crushment of the establishment while also propagating being seen to uphold the betterment of social values. Twins were void as certain quarters as Robin Hood type criminals whose crimes were seen as acceptable. Uh, Penfold Mount. What's it? What's the last name here?
Mounts.
Penfold Mounts noted that they combine an air of menace and violence together with the image of romanticized air of heroic gentleness, generosity, and apparent reinforced with the traditional society order parameters of conventionism and restraint within the contents. I wish I had a PR rep like that. That's some pretty words right there. Within this content, the Krays made a point to stress that they were limits. There were limits to the values that they were willing to violate while promoting the image themselves of benefactors of society. For example, they made a great point to stress the image of being respectful towards women, as they knew that the British public did not like men who disrespectful towards women. One former of the firm, uh, Tony Lambrino, Stephanie
Lambrino.
stated the polygyny of the Krays was a myth, maintaining that the only people the brothers ever cared about were themselves. Jerks and Lerner know the image of the Krays had little to do with who the brothers actually were, as they described the twins as considerable more vicious and selfish than the popular folk hero image of them would allow. Admirers of the brothers stressed their supposed Robin Hood characteristics, with the Krays alleged to have given away as much of their ill-gotten wealth to the deserving poor of the East End. Their respect for women and their force for order, who engaged who what were considered social acceptable crimes such as theft, while punishing those who engaged in what were considered social unacceptable crimes such as rape. The East End at the times had its own self informal rules, such as deep distrust of the Metropolitan Police, as emphasized by public saying, "Thou shalt not grass," which led to police complaining about the wall of silence. Within the East End were Rogers, was widely admired, which happens when you have crime ridden and everything. But Jerkins and Lutherans noted that symbiotic heroes were elected through their excess, the most anonymous theft, the most sadistic violence, and almost psychologically quest for glory and infamy were topmost in people's mind. I wonder if they robbed somebody, got out all the information and everything, and pointed everything to the Craigs. And then everybody's like, nah, they couldn't have done it. Just let them pass. I mean, so interesting on that stuff. Concentrating on the Craigs were seen in other quarters as symbols of moral decay and evil, with famous photographers of the brothers taken. The famous photographs of the brothers taken by Dave Banling being viewed as archetypes of potential villainy. Jerkin and Lennon wrote that the twins became symbols of the public mind of British organized crime itself, as the brothers were associated with tales of excess and gluttony, violence, and to a time. Sorry about that. Talking long times gets foamy stuff in my throat. Anyways, not only as organized crime as never been seen before, but an integrity into the establishment and vanguard in public culture. Jerkins and Lothar and Fuller maintained that the Craigs were closely associated with the East End, an area viewed as social disorganized and moral decay, further contributed to the negative pictures of the brothers. I wonder if they ever gotten like bullied by the Crays, the journalists. That'd be really that happens a lot. At least some critics of the Crays made xenophobic arguments that the twins were not even English stock, but were instead the products of a mixture of Auschwitz Jews and Romanian descent. In this context, the Crays were presented as typical of the East End, which was viewed in certain quarters as a improvised and lawlessness area that attracted many immigrants. There is no evidence of the Cray having any Jewish or Romanian origins, a claim that seemed to have been made only in the associates of the Cray with their supposed family homeland in Eastern Europe and to descent on English society. That this is, you don't have any other thing to say. And it's like what's happening nowadays. It's like you don't have anything else better to say about the person's political views and everything, which isn't political. But they are like, well, you're a Nazi. No, I'm not. No, we're not. No, these people aren't. It's just they can't come up with a better. They're not witty enough to come up with something better, so they just say what everybody else is saying. It's hilarious. If if you really want to break a person down, most of the time you can just find something that's really, 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 really bad. But uh but Jerkins and Lawrence argued that the rareness of the identical twins made the brothers especially malevolent, giving them a freak show image, as many found viewing two men who looked and sounded persistently the same to disturbing and unnerving. Yeah, it is kind of unnerving. The closeness of the Krays made them sinister as Lambrino. God, I can't remember.
Lambrino.
Yeah, Lambrino. Recalled in 1995, you were never, ever on solid ground with them. They played little games of their own. There was an unspoken language. It was what they didn't say as much as what they did say. Their myth was that the Krays took care of their own, but never saw it. The Krays were their own. Alongside the freak show image were suggestions that what was viewed at the time as perversion sexuality, at the time when homosexual was widely considered an abomination. Uh, yes, especially within on the world East End. Roddy made a point of flaunting his relationship with men while was considered to be a quick shocking during that period. Reggie was considered heterosexual, but he had only one known relationship with a woman and was only briefly married. There was also rumors that he had a boyfriend as a teenager. Krays were not asexual, but an intermittent nature of their sexuality contributed to the popular image of being some vague way very preserved. The fact that the twins were successful gangsters while not subscribing to the standards of hetero motive, hard men, or lovable rogues stereotypes associated with the criminal peers, while also rejecting the popular effortsment stereotype of gay men. They let a sense of something unnatural about them. The sordid facts that presented during the Kray's trial for murder led their folk hero image being eclipsed by a folk villain image. But Tom Dilgberg, a labor, what was it, MP? Uh, Parliament, member of Parliament, and a Gotham columnist for the Daily Express, was accountable for the conservative peers allure Boothby, though dinner parties hosted by Lord Beaverbrook, the the person that owned the newspaper, through his friends and theater director Joan Littlewood. Dilberg had met Reginald Craig, who in turn introduced Boothby to Ronnie. Ronnie and Boothby entered a homosexual relationship with, in which the uh, Stephanie Hawking. How am I with this one? Oh, masochist Boothby enjoyed being dominated by Ronnie, and Ronnie, a sexual sadist. This aspect of Boothby's life was unknown to the general public, who knew him as a celebrity peer who frequently represented the Conservative Party on talk shows. For the purpose of blackmail and the sheer power that came from associating with powerful men, Ronnie hosted parties for Boothby and other upper class gay men who were working class rent boys. That's the thing. Rent boys, male prostitute. Okay, rent. They're gigolos. Were made available for sex. Rent boys. It threw me through a loop. I'm sorry. Rent boys. That's a new term I haven't heard yet. I'm going to start using that. You're a rent boy. What? What does that even mean? Confuse them even more. In July 1964, an explosive Sunday Mirror that Ronnie had begun a homosexual relationship with Boothby. At the time when sex between men had been a criminal offense in the UK, police had leaked to the Sunday Mirror several photographs featuring Ronnie and Boothby posing together, alongside a photograph of them with Boothby's. Is it Boothby? Stephanie Hawking. Oh, help me out with this one.
Boothby's.
Boothby's. Okay. Chauffeur Leslie Holt and Teddy Smith, a member of the firm who was also the lover of Drillbig. The photographs were not printed, but they were alluded to in the headlines. The picture we must not print, along with two peers and gangsters, Yard and Corey. Yard and Corey, Scotland Yard. Although no names were printed in the piece, the Krays threatened the journalists involved in Boothby. Threatened to sue the newspaper with the help of labor lawyer Harold Wilson, solicitor Arnold Goodman. In the face of this, the Sunday Mirror backed down, sacking its editor and printing an apology and paying Boothby $40,000 in out-of-court settlement. Because of this, other newspapers unwillingly exposed the crowd's criminal activities. Decades later, Channel 4 established the truth of the allegations and released a documentary called The Gangster and the Preserved Peers. Wow, in 2009. Boothby called the 40,000 over 1 million in 2024 values. He was awarded from the Sunday Mirror tainted money, and though he professed to have donated the majority of the money to charity, it appears that the Krays took a bolt of the award. Oh, so he paid the fucking Craigs. Okay. And one of Boothby's first actions following the suit was to write a check for $5,000 to Rodney. Rodney also launched a libel action of his own against the Sunday Mirror columnist Cecil Hamsworth King for calling him a homosexual thug in one of his columns. Yeah, kind of word, dude. Both the judge dismissed the suit under the grounds that it was a fair comment. Good on you, judge. That was a fair comment. Ryan was furious with the dismissal and raised to a group of journalists proves that what I always said, one law for the fucking rich and the other for the poor. Police investigated the Krays on several occasions, but the twins' reputation for violence made witnesses afraid to testify, which happens. There was also a problem for both the main political parties. The conservatives were unwilling to press the police to end the Krays' power for fear that the Boothby connection would be publicized. On the layer, we're gaining control of the House of Commons with an extremely thin majority and prospect of snapping an election in the very near future. Did not want connections between Wally and Dilberg to get into the public realms. Now, they had an alliance with the American Mafia during the 1960s. The Kray formed an alliance with the Commission, which were the Commission is a governing body of American Mafia formed in 1931 by Charles Lucky Lunano following the Castle Mandate War, and replaced the title of Capo di... I'm not saying that. Anyways, the governing body of the American Mafia. The brothers were connected to Mir Lansky and Angelo Bruno, two New York mafiosos who were looking to invest in London nightclubs and casinos to engage in money laundering. Similar establishment in Havana had long been served that purpose, but after the Cuban Revolution in 1959 led to their closure. The mafia considered London as an alternative. The belief that the Krays were able to influence the British government by blackmailing political figures such as Boothby made them attractive and prospects for partners. Both Lansing and Bruno were considered to be the diplomatic figures by standing of American organized crime and were felt by more qualified to negotiate with the Krays. The conditions between Lansky and the Krays was the go between was George Raff, a declining Hollywood actor whom the Krays idolized for his performance as a hitman. Uh, Gino Renano in the film Scarface. There were two Scarface movies. Oh, didn't know that. With his career established over, Raffs had moved to London in 1965 with the hope of finding roles in the European films. Lansky had opened a Colony Sports Club in London and installed Raft as a normal owner, parting to avoid the attention of British authorities and party to gain attention of gamblers. The club was marked not so much as a British gambler, but rather an older, wealthier American tourist. That makes sense. Okay. The Krays were hired to provide protection at the club, being paid $500 a week to provide thugs from the firm to act as security. An attempt meeting between Ronnie Linsky and Bruno in New York was aborted when U.S. immigration authorities denied him entry. Oh, wow. Okay. The following year, the branch of the Royal Bank of Canada was robbed in Montreal with $50,000 in Canadian dollars and bearer bonds being stolen. 72 robberies in Montreal resulted in the halting of $1 million. The Montreal-based Cortini crime family, the Canadian satellite of New York, Bonin. I'm gonna have to Stephanie Hawkins this again. Bonin, crime family just decided to sell the stolen bonds in Britain through the Krays. Twins set over a corrupt businessman, Leslie the Brain Pine, to pick up the bonds for transport. Pine was able to cash the stolen bonds at a London brokerage house, netting the handsome profit for the firm. The success of the deal made the Krays into a preferred British partners for the American mafia, who used the twins as a number of times afterwards in a similar arrangement. The business of redeeming the stolen bonds in London only led to the break between Pine and the Krays. Pine charged that since he was the one taking all the risk in the smuggling and redeeming of the bonds, he was entitled to a larger share of profit. The Krays refused Pine's demand, which caused him to leave the firm. Pine did not contact the authorities, but merely possible that he might be one day be prosecuted. Prosecution witness led the Krays the plot to his murder. Kray, who fought for the Battle of Montecasco in 1944. Let's get this right.
Monte Cassino.
Monte Cassino. In 1944, reluctantly their threats of violence, which only made the twins angrier, lacking the necessary connections to the city to keep the redeeming of the stolen bonds on their own. The Cranes turned Alan Bruce Cooper, a disruptible American businessman living in London. Basically, that's who they went to after Payne denied them that. Ronnie shot and killed George Cornell, a member of Richardson gang, at a blind beggar pub in Whitechapel on March 9th, 1966. I'm sorry I'm not going through with this as fast as possible. I don't know what it is, but my throat is killing me. The day before, there has been shootout with Mr. Smith in a nightclub at Catford involving the Richardson and Richard Hart, an associate of the firm who was shot dead. But the day before, there had been a shootout with Mr. Smith in the nightclub at Crawford involving the Richardsons and Rich Hart, an associate of the firm who was shot dead. The shooting led the arrest of nearly all of Richardson's gang. Cornell, by chance, was not present at Mr. Smith's and was not arrested. Ronnie was drinking at another pub when he learned that the Cornell whereabouts. He went to the Blind Beggar with his driver, Scotch Jack, John Dickerson, Dixon, and associate of Ian Barley. Ronnie's entry in the pub with Burley walked straight to Cornell and shot him in the head in public view. Barley confessed to what would happen, fired 5 shots in the air, warning outlookers not to report what was happening to police. Cornell died at 3:30 a.m. in the hospital. According to some sources, Ronnie killed Cornell because he referred to him as a fat poof. There's a fat poof. A dictionary term for gay men. Wow. Okay. That's a new one on me. During confrontation between the Krays and the Richardsons at the Astor Club on Christmas Day, 1965, Richardson member Frankie Faster was tied to the murder of Hart at Mr. Smith's, but was acquitted. Richardson's main member, Ray Belgian Collery, testified that he saw Cornell kicking Hart. Witnesses would not cooperate with the police due to the intimidation, and the trial ended inconclusively without pointing to any subjects in particular. In his 1988 memoirs, Marnie wrote, "I felt fucking marvelous. I have never felt so good, so bully alive before or since 20 years on, and I can recall every seconds of killing George Carnell. I replayed it in my mind millions of times." Good Lord. Craig's Mafia Association were unhappy of Cornell's murder, feeling that it was reckless on the parts of Ronnie to shoot anyone in public instead of assessing the task to do to a junior associate. Basically, he should have pawned it off to somebody else. With the help of Raff, Reggie was able to maintain the alliance, arguing the firm is still the best business partner to the mafia could turn into London. Basically, he was Raff and Reggie used the fact that none of the witnesses at the Blind Beggar were willing to testify against Ronnie as evidence in the degree of fear that the Krays inspired. Shortly afterwards, Raft prevented the return to UK when the Home Office ordered listed men as undesirable, thereby costing the Krays their strongest ally within the mafia. On December 12th, 1966, the Krays helped Frank Mitchell, the Mad Axeman, to escape Dartmoor prison. Ronnie had befriended Mitchell while they served time together in Walsworth prison. Mitchell felt that the authorities should review his case for pardon. So Reggie thought that he was doing him a favor by getting him out of Dartmoor, highlighting his case in the media and forcing the authorities to act. Once Mitchell had escaped, the Krays held him at a friend's flat and Brake Road, East Ham. He was a large man with a mental disorder, and it was difficult to control. He disappeared, but the Krays were acquitted of his murder. Freddie Foreman, a friend of the Krays, claimed in his autobiography, Respect, that he shot Mitchell dead as a favor to the twins and disposed his bodies at sea. Now, Detective Chief Superintendent, that's a long one. Detective Chief Superintendent Leonard Nipper Reed of Scotland Yard, was promoted to the murder squad, and his first assignment was to bring down the Kray twins during the first half of 1964. Uh, Reed had been investigating their activities, but publicly and officially denies of Ronnie's relationship with Boothby made the evidence that he collected useless. Reed went into after the twins again in 1967, but frequently came up against the East End wall of silence, which discouraged anyone providing information to the police. They were represented in court by Stephanie Hawking. Helped me with this one.
Nemo Lethbridge.
By the end of 1967, Reed had built enough evidence against the Krays. Early in 1968, the Krays employed Alan Bruce Cooper, who sent Paul Evans to Glasgow to buy explosive for a car bomb. Evans was a radio engineer who put a pirate radio station, Radio Such, in the air in 1964, later named Radio City. After police denied him in Scotland, he confessed to being involved with 3 murder attempts. The evidence was weakened by Cooper, who claimed that he was an agent of the U.S. Treasury Department investigating links between the American Mafia and the Craig's gang. The U.S. Treasury Department, I think this was the FBI, a part of the FBI. The attempts at the murders were his attempt to put the blame on the Craigs. Eventually, Scotland Yard denied their arrest of the Craigs on the evidence already collected, in the hopes that other witnesses would be forthcoming once the Craigs were in custody. On May 8th, 1968, the Craigs and 15 members of the firm were arrested. Exploding measures were used to stop collision between the accused. Nepper Reed then secretly interviewed each of the arrested and offered each member of the firm a deal if they testified against the others. Though the twins directed that he was not prepared to condone into a plea guilt to anger. He didn't want to be angry. He didn't want to have angry to get. Let me get this down. He didn't want to get the twins angry, so he informed Reed via his mother that he was ready to cooperate. So he had to do a fix around. Ronnie Hart had initially not been arrested and was not named in initial sought after by police. With Daltrey's testimony, Hart was arrested off of the same terms as the others. Hart then told Reed everything that happened during the McVeany's murders. Although he did not know anything about what had happened to the body, although Reed knew that for certain that Ronnie Craig had murdered George Cornell in the Blind Beggar Pug, no one had been prepared to testify against the twins out of fear. Upon finding out that the twins initially, good Lord, this is a small word, but I can't. Cajoled him. Scotch Jack Dickens also turned in everything he knew about the Cornell murder. Although not a witness to the murder, he was an accessory, having given Ronnie Craig and Ian Burley to the pub. He'd driven them to there. The police still needed a witness to the murder. Franklin Mitchell escaped and disappeared with much harder to obtain evidence for, since the majority of those arrests were not involved with his plan and escape and disappearance. The twins' defense under the counsel of John Platt's Mill considered of flat denials of all charges and discrediting the witness by pointing out their criminal past. Judge Mefford Stevenson said, "I made my review. Society has earned the rest from your activities." The trial, which lasted from January to March 1969, was a media sensation, which was demanded to attend the trial in the black market emerged for seats. Oh my God, they paid with the price of $5 a day for a seat in the public gallery section of the court. Jesus, people had to pay to the press had to pay to get seats in the court. That's capitalism, I guess. It was a largest murder hearing in history of British criminal justice during the Stevenson state of the sentencing. I recommend that they should not be less than 30 years. In March 1969, both of the sentencing to life imprisonment, mandatory sentence for murder, death by having abolishment 4 years earlier. Okay, so they couldn't be killed or executed. With a non-parole period of 30 years for murder of Cornell and McVitie. Their brothers Charlie was imprisoned for 10 years for his part in the murder. Ronnie and Reggie Kray were allowed under large police guards to attend the funeral of their mother, Violet, on August 11th, 1982, following her death from cancer a week earlier. They were not allowed to attend her burial in the Kray's family plot at Crickford Mount Cemetery. The funeral was attended by celebrities including Dana Dors and underworld figures known to the Craigs. To avoid the publicity that surrounded the Munro's funeral, twins did not ask permission to attend their father's funeral in March 1983. Ronnie Craig, as a Category A prisoner, which in the United Kingdom prisons were driven into 4 categories of security. Each adult is assigned a category according to their crime, sentencing, and the risk of escape. We got the same thing here in the United States, but it's not like categories. Denied almost all liberties and not allowed to mix with other prisoners. He eventually classified insane, his paranoia, schizophrenia being tempered by constant medication. In 1979, he was committed and lived in the remainder of his life in the Bullmere Hospital in Cawthorne, Berkshire. Reggie Keyes was locked up in Manstone Prison for 8 years at Category B. In 1997, he was transferred to Wayland Prison, a Category C prison in Norfolk. Ours is kind of different. We got AgSeg, which is basically one person per cell, and high security. Never worked. Well, I worked high security for a couple of days, a month or so. And general population. And in the general population, you have another one that's dorms. Basically, the inmates can walk around inside a bigger room. They have like a little slot. It's a little bit more dangerous in dorms than you would think, because the inmates aren't like they can go around and talk to each other and whatnot. But anyways, in 1985, officials in Baltimore Hospital discovered a business card of Ronnie that led to the evidence that the twins from separate institutions were operating Kegley Enterprise, the Louvre bodyguard and protection business for Hollywood stars, together with their older brothers, Charlie Craig, and an accomplice at large. Among their clients was Frank Sinatra, who hired 18 bodyguards from Kegley Enterprise on his visit in the 1985 Wimbledon Championship, which is basically was a tennis tournament. Documents released under Freedom of Information laws revealed that although the officials were connected about this operation, they believed that there was no legal bias to shut it down. Ronnie, in his autobiography, My Story, 1994, as a committed writer, Robin McGibbons, on the Craze tape, Ronnie stated, "I'm bisexual, not gay." Bisexual. Okay, so he liked women and men. In 1960, he was planned to marry a woman named Monica, whom he dated for nearly 3 years. He called her the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. This mentioned in Reggie's book, Born Fighter, also extracted and mentioned in Ronnie's own book, My Story, and in Kate Kray's book, Shorty, Murder, Madness, and Marriage, and Free at Last. Ronnie was arrested before he had a chance to marry Monica. Although she married his ex-boyfriend. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Monica apparently married uh, Ronnie's ex-boyfriend. 59 letters were sent to her between May and December 1968 when he was in prison, when Ronnie still had feelings for her, and his love for her was very clear. He referred to her as my angel, my little doll. She also still had feelings for Ronnie. Those letters were auctioned off in 2010. Man, I did not realize how popular they were if they're auctioning off letters. Okay. The letter, well, you can make a book out of those letters, I guess. Like that would probably be a good investment. Letters Ronnie sent to his mother, Violet, from prison in 1968 were referred to Monica. If they let me see Monica and put me with Reggie, could not ask for anything more. He went on to say that Monica is the only girl I have ever liked in my life, and she is the lovely little person, as you know. When you see her, tell her that I'm in love with her even more now. Rodney subsequently married twice, marrying Helen Mandler. Hold on.
Elaine Mildner.
Elaine Mildner in 1985 at Broadmoor Chapel with Joey Price as best man. Before the couple divorced in 1989, following which he married Kate Howard, whom he divorced in 1994. Kate Howard lived for a number of years in Headcourt, Kent, and Fort Lane. Now, Reggie married Frances Sheen in 1965. It was thought that she took her own life in 1967, but only 2 days after her death, Ronnie confessed to Reggie that he had murdered her. Oh wow! Reggie only had told this to few people. One of whom was a fellow inmate, Bradley Alshery. In 1997, Reggie married Roberta Jones, who he met while still in prison. She was helping to publicize a film she was making about Ronnie, who had died in the hospital 2 years earlier. Controversies about these two. There was a long-running campaign with some of the minor celebrity support to have the twins released from prisons, but success in the home security vetoed the idea, largely on the ground that both Kray prison's records were married by violence towards other inmates. The campaign gathered momentum after the release of the film based on their lives, The Krays, in 1990. Produced by Ray Burtis. It starred Sandra Ballat. Hold on.
Spandau Ballet B.
Okay. Brothers Martin and Gary Kemp, who played the roles of Reggie and Ronald, respectively. Ronnie and Reggie and Charlie Kray received $255,000 for the film. Reggie wrote, "I seem to have walked a double path most of my life. Perhaps an extra step in one of the most directed might have been me celebrating most than notorious." Other points of Reggie violent prison records when he had been denied separately from Ronnie, arguing that in reality the twins' temperament were a little different. And that is about it. Reggie, now this is just their death. Ronnie suffered a heart attack in Brigmore Hospital on March 15th, 1955, and died 2 days later at the age of 61 in Wexham Park Hospital in Sloughnall, Berkshire. Reggie was allowed out of prison in handcuffs to attend the funeral. Charles Kray, Ronnie and Reggie's older brother, was released from prison in 1965 after serving 7 years of his 10-year sentence for the role at gangland crimes. Charlie was sentenced to 12 years of imprisonment in 1997 for conspiracy to smoke cocaine in an undercover drug sting. He died in prison natural causes on April 4th, 2000, at the age of 72. Reggie was allowed out of the prison to visit his older brother's funeral. During the incarceration, Reggie Kray became a born-again Christian. He was diagnosed with terminal bladder cancer in 2000. He was released from Wayland Prison on August 26th, 2000, to compensate compassionated grounds, I think.
Compassionate.
Yeah, compassionate grounds. At the direction of Home Security Jack Straw, Reggie died from terminal cancer at age 66 on October 1st, 2000. The final weeks of his life were spent with his wife of 3 years, Roberta, in a suite in Townsend Hotel in Norwich. After he left the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital in September 22nd, 2000, 10 days after his death, he was buried beside his brothers Ronnie in Crosford Mount Cemetery. During the funeral, crowds of thousands lined up to applaud. Anyways, that is the end of the Kray brothers. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.